Salute, sir.
Hi all, can everybody hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I trust you had your results by now. Sorry it took so long. I was sure that it was accessible on Moodle, but yeah, there was some Moodle is I consider myself tech savvy somehow, but yeah, it's just beyond my power. But yeah, next time it should be much quicker. Don't worry.
Professor?
Yeah.
I noticed that the last lab 14, is due after our final.
Oh, okay.
Is it normal?
I don't know if this is normal, but if you noticed it, then it's probably the case. So it's due after, but thing is, you can do it whenever you want.
Mm-hmm.
So I suggest you do it before the final.
All right.
All right. So I hope you were happy with your grade. Otherwise, it's 20%, so there's always time to make it up. Okay, so yeah, today we start more interesting concepts, I would say. So yeah, perfect competition is like setting the stage. It's the sort of ideal version of economics that we would aspire to, but of course reality is messy and complex, and things aren't as perfect as we would like them to be in real life. So that's where we start really to dig in some interesting concepts. So yeah, we're going to have two lectures on monopolies. Maybe it's still it's going to be faster than 2 lectures. I've looked at it, and it's yeah. Maybe we go get ahead of the material. Who knows? We'll see. All right. So let us start. Okay, so today, yeah, we start with, so it's called Economic Issues and Concept, but it really is about monopolies. All right, so thing to remember is we're looking first at a single price monopolist, or what we would say a non-discriminating monopolist. What does that mean? It means it's a monopolist that sells to everybody at a single price. So it cannot decide to see one customer and sell that customer some object for $10 and then look at the next one and see, okay, that one is probably ready to pay more, so I'm going to sell it at 15, for instance. So that's very good for the monopolist to be able to discriminate, to be able to sell to different clients at different price. But the simplest case is a classic case, I would say, is the single price monopolist that we're going to see. And what's difficult for the monopolist then is that if the monopolist wants to hike the price for some customers, then it has to hike the price for all customers, or the converse is true. So if it wants to lower the price, then it's going to lower the price for all customers. And you see that it's going to create some trade-off for the monopolist as to what price to set in order to maximize its profit and extract the most revenue out of its customers. Then we're going to talk a bit about cartels, monopoly power, and then the opposite, the counterfactual to that is when the monopolist is allowed price discrimination. This is super interesting, super fun. So yeah, probably not today, next time. All right. So unlike firm in perfect competition, a monopolist faces the all demand. So what does that mean? All firms face a demand. So even if I'm a small shop that has usually 10 clients per day, I face the demand curve, the all demand curve. It's just that whether I sell 0 or whether I sell 10 units today, is that going to have some influence on the whole market price? Well, no, because I'm just a super small firm. So the all demand is not affected by me. But imagine the following. Imagine I'm the only firm on the market. Then in that case, if I choose to sell 0, or if I choose to sell, say, 10 million units because I'm the only person, then of course this is going to impact the price because I'm facing the all demand function. So let me just draw them in real quick. So imagine that I'm a very, very small firm. So I'm going to zoom in. And then I decide to say I sell this quantity, or then I increase my my quantity somehow, and I decide to sell here. So does that change the price of the market? Well, a tiny bit, but not that much. Even so, you can imagine that all the firms are along the demand curve. But then if I'm a large firm and I decide to sell a small amount or a big amount, then this is going to impact the price a lot. So if I sell a small amount, the market price is going to set at a very high price. And here the market price is going to set at a low price. So that's what we mean by facing the all demand. So a monopolist will face the entire demand of the market. Let me just put some stuff on the graph because it's not a good habit. So, oops. do that. So Q small, and then Q large. Yes, so I'm going to get high and P low. Well, actually, my price is much lower. All right. So there's a trade-off between the price it charges and the quantity it sells. So if I want to sell a large quantity, then eventually it's going to depress the, or not depress the demand, but force me to lower my price, since so if I sell a small quantity, then I can force a few customers to pay a very high price. But then since I cannot discriminate, then if I want to sell a larger quantity, since these customers there are not as willing to buy as these ones, I have to lower my price, but I'm a non-discriminating monopolist. I sell at a single price. So it means that I not only sell to these people at a low price, but also to these first people, I reduce my price for them too. So there's this trade-off between having a large volume at a low price or a small volume at a high price. It sort of looks like some what some firms actually do. Some firms choose to sell very high-end product for a small niche market, but a very high price, or some choose to sell to a large volume but low price. Note that it's, so I don't want to say it's equivalent, because in that case, that's you would say it's those are different markets. Those are different type of products. Those are different price scales. So this is purely a homogeneous good, I would say. Yeah. So what is my total revenue? My total revenue is price times quantity. And what happens is, if I increase quantity, price goes down. If I increase price, quantity goes down. So you see that there is some sort of trade-off I have to face. I'm going to choose some quantity that gives me a sort of okay price and a sort of okay quantity as well. Right. So what is the average revenue? So average revenue is the total revenue divided by the quantity. So this is going to be useful when we see whether the monopolist has a profit or not. So this is just we're just setting up concepts here. So the slides for that chapter, I found they're relatively nice, so I want to follow them. Yeah, so it looks like there's only P, but so if I usually like precise mathematics. So what I would say is, so this looks like P is just some constant, but that's not the case. So what you would really like to write is this: average revenue of Q equals to total revenue of Q divided by Q. So this is just to see that average revenue depends on quantity, which is equal to, because what? Because price depends on quantity times Q divided by Q. So it's equal to P of Q. So the average revenue, it's not, so P is not a constant here. It's a function of how much I decide to produce. So I'm just going to say price. This function of the production quantity contrary to two firms in perfect competition. As we've seen last time. Since the demand curve shows that the price of the okay. So since the demand curve is the price of the product, so it's also the monopolist's average revenue curve. So that's pretty obvious if you look at it. So. Now, other concept, marginal revenue, it's equal to the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. And again, the total revenue is a function of quantity. So what happens to marginal revenue if I increase Q? Well, again, so Q increases, so total revenue should increase since I increase my volume, but P decreases. And the net effect is what we call the marginal revenue. So before we add that the marginal revenue was just equal to was just constant, was just the price, but here it's more complicated than that. Yeah, so this is what I was saying. So because there's a downward demand curve, so the monopolist must reduce the price that it charges on all units to sell an extra units yeah, so it means that the price is not equal to the marginal revenue. It's the marginal revenue minus the impact of increasing the price. Yeah. So this looks theoretical. So we're going to look at what happens more in a curve. I prefer curves. So curves they talk more, I would say. Yeah, so marginal revenue is equal to the price, because if I increase my sales by 1 unit, then I get the sales price for that unit, but I lose revenue on all the other units I was selling. So do we get to a price? Yeah, okay, now we have a graph, so we can reason about it. So here we go. So imagine that I start at let's say I start at 6 and I go to 5. Yeah, okay. So I start at, so it would be 40. Yeah, and I go to 50. All right. So imagine I sell 40 units. So I'm here. And I go to 50 units. So I increase my production, but what happens to the sales price? Then, since fewer people are willing to pay a large amount of money if I want to sell a larger volume, then I have to convince them to still buy my product by decreasing the price. So the price is going to go to 5 instead. What happens to, so this is, so what happens to the price? The price decreases from 6 to 5. The quantity sold increases from 40 to 50. What is the effect on total revenue? Well, here it was 6 times 40, that was 240. And here it's 5 times 50, it's 250. So this, it looks like it was something good to do if I want to maximize my total revenue, because I went from 240 to 250. But note that if I said, oh, I still want to increase my quantity even more, so let's go from a quantity sold of 50 to 60, then what happens? Well, my price then has to go even lower to 4. And so I'm going back to my old total revenue of 240. So the maximum I can extract from that market is 250. So here I increase by 10 from 240 to 250, but then here I start decreasing. And here is a plot of the marginal revenue. And as you can see, the marginal revenue increases until I get to 50. And then at 50, it starts to decrease. So the marginal revenue is the change in total revenue, delta TR. Or yeah, so delta TR and the marginal revenue is delta TR divided by delta Q. Yeah, so it becomes negative once I pass the midpoint here. Does that make sense? And by the way, somebody can guess what the slope is of the marginal revenue given the slope of the total revenue? Somebody who knows a bit about math can say.
Can you repeat the question?
So, so given that, so what is the slope of the demand curve? Well, we can see that each time I increase buying quantity sold by 10, the price is reduced by 1. So, so the slope here would be minus 1 divided by 10. Yeah, minus 1 divided by 10. So what is then this slope there? Is this slope larger or smaller?
Smaller.
Yeah, it's that's a weird question to ask actually, because it's negative. So it's 2 times steeper. So it's smaller because here it's minus 1 over 10, and this is minus 2 over 10. And let me show you how why this is possible. So first of all, so the total revenue. So the total revenue is equal to price times quantity, right? So what is the impact of increasing the quantity on the total revenue? So delta total revenue equals to price times delta Q plus delta P times Q. This is an approximation because I start with some Q and I finish with some other Q. So, but so this effect here is this effect.
Professor?
Yeah.
Does it mean that every time we have delta something, delta function, we just take the derivative of that function?
Yeah, delta is a sort of hidden way of using derivatives without spooking people. But yeah, it's exactly the same concept.
Thank you.
All right, so what happens here? Well, the price increase, so what happens to my total revenue when I increase by 1? So I have my sales price and I increase my quantity here by 10. But I have this extra thing happening there is the change in price from 6 to 5 multiplied by what? By the whole quantity I was selling before. So this is the second effect here. So what is the sign of this effect? Is this positive or negative?
Negative.
Negative. So delta, if I increase, yeah, the question is, so here delta Q is equal to 10 because I increase from 40 to 50. So this effect here is positive. Origin 0. And then here, what's the sign of this thing here? Well, delta P is negative since I decrease from 6 to 5. So this is more than 0. So I have these two opposite effects. Yeah, I think I'm not going to go into too deep into the slope there because that's maybe too mathematical for most of you. So I can just tell you that so it's easy to see that if you have a linear demand curve, then the slope of the marginal revenue curve is twice as large. So you can compute that for yourselves. Yeah. So here the slope would be minus 1.
Is that always, or is it just for that example?
So if for any linear demand curve. So here it's linear, it's just the slope is constant. So if that's the case, okay, yeah, now that I, so let me have some intuition about why this is the case. So let me do that here. So the total revenue is equal to, here it's, price times quantity. So total revenue is equal to, and here, what is the equation for the price is, it is 10 minus Q divided by 10, I think. Is that the case? So if Q is 0, it's equal to 10. If Q is 10, it's equal to 10 minus 10 minus 10, so 9. Yeah, so it's price is equal to 10 minus Q divided by 10. So that's the function that they were using here. So then total revenue is 10 minus Q divided by 10 times Q. And then, so what is, so it's equal to 10Q. Minus Q times Q divided by 10. So we see that we have a Q squared here, Q times Q. That because you have Q that multiplies Q here. So here, this is the first effect, this is the second effect. And then if I take delta total revenue, so it's going to be equal to 10 times delta Q minus, and then I'm going to have two delta Qs. I'm going to have delta Q times Q divided by 10. So that's the first one there, but then I have a second one minus delta Q minus Q times delta Q divided by 10. So you see that, so each time I have a Q, I convert it to delta Q, but here I have two of them, and that's the way to do it. So if I was using derivative, it would be obvious. So that's my, so if you don't follow everything, just know this, that I'm taking the difference in delta Q for each Q that's independently. So yeah, and then if I have delta TR divided by delta Q, I'm going to get, so 10 times delta Q divided by delta Q, that's 10, minus, here I get minus Q divided by 10. And then here I again get minus Q divided by 10. So that's minus 2 times Q divided by 10. So here's how the 2 appeared there. Yeah, and this is, of course, delta TR, delta total revenue divided by delta Q. That's the marginal revenue here. So let's see. All right. Maybe that's too much math. I don't know. When you learn derivative, you're going to see that's very obvious. Okay. But if you didn't get all of that, don't worry. It's getting farther than what we need to. Short run profit maximization. So what does the monopolist do? Well, it's always the same thing. It's the monopolist sets marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So last time that we just did it, what we had was that the marginal revenue was equal to the price. So we said if the marginal revenue from an extra unit I sell is higher than the marginal cost, then I should sell that unit. But if I increase my production and then the marginal revenue I get from an extra unit is lower than the marginal cost, then I'm selling too much. So I should reduce it. And we had seen that the optimum was that marginal cost equals marginal revenue. It's the same thing here. It's just that marginal revenue is not just the price. It's exactly what we had just discussed here. This is the marginal revenue. But I said marginal revenue equals to marginal price. Equals marginal cost. And the price is determined by the dynamic curve. And yeah, so that's the thing. So they say catch figure 10.1, and it has nothing to do with anything. So don't try to understand what they're saying there. It's I don't know what they're saying, but I'm going to do it for you. So let me, all right, let me draw it in that corner. So that's the neat thing about teaching online is I can zoom in and take whatever space I need to draw my graphs. So let me show you what the monopolist does. Can I take a bit more space? Okay, so I'm going to use hopefully the same colors. So here the colors is dark blue and light blue. All right, so let's use dark blue and light blue. So that's the demand. And then we have marginal revenue, which looks like this. Let's have this be lighter blue. Oh yeah, maybe we can draw it here. Okay, so then what it says is marginal revenue has to be equal to marginal cost. So here we don't have a marginal cost, but let me put one for you. So the marginal cost would look like this, for instance. So let's have that in red. So maybe our marginal cost look like this. Yeah, maybe actually I'm going to draw something that looks more like. Anyway, it doesn't really matter for the monopolist. But so that's our marginal cost curve. It's the same thing as what we would have for any firm, even in a perfect competition case. So then what does the monopolist do? It sets its quantity. So this is quantity, this is price. It sets its quantity such that marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So it's going to produce here. Right there. And you see that the price is going to charge, though, is not this price there. That's the marginal revenue. The price is going to charge is this price over here, which is determined by the demand curve. Is that vertical, by the way? Yeah, it looks vertical more or less. So that's the optimal price. So let me see, this is P star. Yeah, PM, let's see. All right, PM for monopolist and QM for monopolist. So that's what the monopolist chooses. It chooses such that the marginal revenue equals the marginal cost. And then what is the revenue of the monopolist? Not the revenue, but the profit. Well, it's always, it's as they say here. It's the price minus the average total cost at that quantity. So we still have to draw average total cost. So let's draw that in, let's say, purple.
Professor?
Yeah.
Is that only for monopolists? Because it looks a lot like any other individual firms curve, cost, and demand curve.
Yeah. So it's exactly the. Oops. Why can't I pick it up? So any firm is going to face a demand, have a marginal cost, have an average total cost. The only difference is its behavior. Yeah, so let me fix this more or less. I'm trying is to have a economically accurate representation, which means that the marginal cost should cross the average total cost at its minimum. So yeah, let me draw again the marginal cost better. This is good. This is average total cost. So here's what's going on. So the monopolist chooses QM such that marginal cost equals marginal revenue. And what is the profit of the monopolist? Well, it's the price minus the average total cost at this QM, which is here, multiplied by the quantity sold. So the profit is this green box right here. This is profit. And it's pure profit in the sense that here there's the monopolist is alone on the market. It chooses everything. There is no incumbent firm, no competitor. So this is a static situation. It's, well, I mean, in the long run, as we're going to see, things change. But for the time being, the monopolist enjoys this, I would say, pure profit. So contrary to a firm in perfect competition, so do you remember how much profit will, in the long run, will firms in perfect competition make?
If they want to maximize profit, isn't it the space between the demand curve and the average total cost?
Yeah, it's the same thing, but so what we've seen about firm entry and exit, make so if you wait a little, so at what tends to happen in perfect competition? We just talked about this last time, I would say.
Companies enter the market because there's profit.
Yes, so they're going to drive their profit to zero, so make zero profit. But monopolist. A profit. Okay, so here it is. So this is the graph, and it's not shown in the book. So use this to remember what's going on. Oh, they put it in red. All right, so let's put it in red. You see it's a red rectangle, but it doesn't exist. So I'm going to make it red for you. Red rectangle. Okay, here it is. Yeah, so monopolist does not have a supply curve because it's not a price taker. So essentially a supply curve is the aggregate of all firms on the market. Well, it's the only firm. So all we have to do is look at what the monopolist does. And this is exactly what the monopolist does here.
At the last slide, the pure profit is where the average total cost crosses the line where, like, how do you determine the square?
So it's so yeah, monopolist chooses QM such that, yeah, going to, so I'm going to make this a bit smaller. Such that marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Then the profit margin at QM is the demand minus average total cost. And so profit margin means the profit margin on every unit, on each. So it's demand minus average total cost. Average total cost is here, demand is there. So maybe it's, if I put that on with the same color, it's going to be. How do I change this? Oh, I don't remember. Anyway, so the demand is this. And the average total cost is this. So the profit margin is demand minus average total cost at QM. And the profit is demand minus average total cost multiplied by how much is sold. So that's QM. All right. So that's this is the whole thing. This is the classic. So understand well this graph, and you understand. Oh, yeah, this. I'm going to put it here to make sure you don't confuse it. And you see that. So the monopolist is never going to sell here. Why? Because its marginal revenue is negative there. So and the marginal cost is always positive. So even if the marginal cost was 0, so it would not make sense for the monopolist to sell in that region because it will just sell money. It's like I would make money if I sold my trinket at $5, but now I decide to sell it at 50 cents to have a huge number of customers, but I'm just wasting money. So here, this is wasteful for the monopolist. The monopolist wants to restrain the quantity sold so that it can hike the price as much as possible. All right. So now, can we compare the monopoly outcome to the competitive outcome? Yes. So we see that there is less competition in a monopoly market, monopoly industry, compared to a perfect competition industry. What does that mean to have less competition? It means that competition is when firms enter the market and sell at a lower price to steal the sales from some other firm. So if they can do that, then they're eventually going to drive down the price until we get to this situation where a price equals marginal cost. So that would be here, demand equals to marginal cost. So we would have a much larger quantity sold, and the price would be much lower. but the monopolist doesn't face the competition. So it's able to say, oh, well, I make zero profit if I sell price equals marginal cost. So I'm going to reduce my production to hike the price and make this pure profit PM here. So this is why we see that for the monopoly, price is above marginal cost. So the monopoly has a here price equals marginal cost, so low, low profit. Here it's high profit. And here we see is for the monopolist, the marginal value of adding an extra unit would be good for the society, but bad for the monopolist. So the monopolist doesn't choose to do it. Yeah, so let me show you on the graph why this happens. Yeah, so that's saying the same thing. So more economic surplus will be generated for the society if the monopolist increase its level of output. But the monopolist chooses not to, and this thus creates a deadweight loss. The monopolist leads to a market inefficiency. All right, so this is the difference. So the marginal cost is here. And now compare these two decisions. So first decision is marginal cost equals price equal demand. This is what would happen in perfect competition case. And what the monopolist does is marginal cost equals marginal revenue. So for the monopoly, so we are here, we restrain the quantity sold. What happens for the monopolist? Well, here compared to QC, so we see that the monopolist, so what's the surplus for the firms that is lost? What is lost for the firm is this triangle there. But what is gained for the monopolist is this all extra income from being able to sell a higher number of units. So this is monopoly gain, and this is monopoly loss. So I'm just going to make sure you see that it's just this section there. So the monopoly loses this. These are units that could have been sold, but are not sold. But the counterpart is the monopolist is able to charge a much higher price. So all this extra profit from the unit that is does sell. So monopoly loss. So net monopoly gain is so so this is why the monopoly chooses to do that. So it says, I'm going to sell a bit less, but I gain more by hiking the price. But for the society then, the surplus less is there's so so we lose two things. We lose these units there and these units there. So this would be the surplus of firms, and this would be a surplus of customers. All right, does that make sense? So this is perfect computation case where we're in QC. The surplus of the consumers is this whole big triangle there. The surplus of the producers is this whole big triangle there. Now the monopoly chooses to sell less than QC. So at QM, then this part of the surplus is less, this part of the surplus is less. So the firms lose a bit, but they make up for it by winning all of this extra square. And then, so the consumers, surplus less for the consumer. So what do they lose? Well, they lose this triangle there, plus, this rectangle there, plus this triangle there. Yeah, so the consumers are really sad. Oops. Why can't I pick this? Oh, yes. Put that in. So the consumers are really sad because one, they pay higher price, and two, they buy fewer units. So the consumers are really, really sad. And the total society loss is this.
But for who is the surplus loss in black?
Surplus loss is the net surplus loss. Yeah. For society, the market. So this is the deadweight loss. So the deadweight loss is these two small triangles there. All right. So, let's see.
Do you have an example of a surplus loss for consumers?
I mean, I'm not sure what I could add, so I could give you some numbers, but really what you have to imagine is, imagine the following. Imagine that the firm, the monopolist, said, I'm going to be nice and sell as long as the last unit I'm selling makes slightly more money for me than the marginal cost it costs. Then it's going to sell until this point there. The sales price is the demand curve, it's the price, and the marginal cost is here. So probably the price would be, I don't know, $10, and the quantity would be 30. And then there's a new manager that comes in and says, oh, I don't care about customers. I just care about maximizing my own profit. So rather than selling here, I'm going to lower the quantity sold and hike the price. So then the price would not be, let's say $10 would be $15, and the quantity would not be I don't know, 3,000 units, but 2,500. So then the total surplus of the consumers, rather than being this, would be this there. So I don't have a mathematical example for you, but this is the sort of thing that would happen if you had a nice manager. And trust me, all of the monopolists, they all want to do the same thing, as they all want to sell a small quantity and pay make customers pay a high price. All right. So now the question is, why do monopolists exist? Because in a way, here what we see is that they do make a pure profit, or rather here, yeah, we see that they do make a pure profit. So if I look at the market and see, oh, there's a monopolist that makes a huge amount of money, I should get in the market and start selling at a slightly lower price. I'm going to capture all the customers of that monopolist and make money. So that's awesome. I should do that. But so there's a reason why the monopolists do not get challenged. And what are they? They are what we call barrier to entry. So there are reasons why firms cannot enter this market. So it can be, entry barriers, so natural or created. Or a natural monopoly. Yeah, so this is if you have a natural barrier entry to natural entry barrier, then you get a natural monopoly. And you can have network effects as well. So what do we mean by natural? We mean something like a huge fixed cost. Like electricity. Like electricity distribution. So why does that usually lead to monopolies or very low competition? It's because imagine I decide to compete against Hydro-Québec. So I'm going to tell people, okay, buy my electricity. I'm going to sell it at a slightly lower price than Hydro-Québec. But for that, what do I have to do? I have to, okay, now I have to install my my electricity network. So just imagine setting up a second electricity network distribution. That's just impossible. It's just so expensive. So these are situations in which the fixed cost of starting to produce is so high that once one firm is set in, then it's almost impossible for other firms to enter. Others sort of created natural barrier would be patent laws, for instance. So what is a patent? it's a law that says, okay, I invented this, so now there's a patent that I ask for my new product, and it says that you cannot produce what I just invented for X number of years. So for that, these years, then I enjoy monopoly power on my new product. So why do we have patents? We have patents because what we are saying is inventing stuff costs money. So the way to pay back this investment is to say, okay, well, you invented that, so at least you get to enjoy it for a few years. So that's a way to stimulate innovation. But that's, of course, it can have downsides. So patents so may encourage innovation.
Sir, can tax and labels be also entry barriers?
What?
Can taxes and labels?
Taxes, not really, because they if you tax all the firms on the market, then it doesn't mean that no, I wouldn't say that. It's something that prevents newcomers from entering the market. So it's true that taxes discourage firms, but they discourage all firms equally, not like newcomers, for instance.
And labels?
Sir,
Yes.
the patent, shouldn't it be like a created barrier instead of a natural barrier?
Yeah, that's created.
Okay.
So economists have tried to sort of describe what the optimal length of patents should be. And it's a very complicated problem. It depends on a lot of things. So Paul Romer has worked on this a bit. Because in a way, that's if I cannot use some knowledge that exists, then it can also be bad for the world. So that's a good example of that. Somebody knows what I have in mind, something that's very relevant in the last few weeks. COVID-19 vaccines. So they cost to invent, but once we have it, we would like to distribute to as large and not an audience, but yeah, to a large number of people. Yeah, so maybe not stifle innovation per se, but stifle, yeah, but may also be inefficient. Because we would like, once something is invented, we would like it to be used by as many people as possible. But you see that if we distribute vaccines to a large number of people, it means that it has to cost little money. So for Moderna or Pfizer that have worked so hard to invent that, then they want to keep it for themselves and still charge a high price for it. There was a nice story about a person who had this idea in the 80s, maybe, or before, I'm not sure. So the idea was, oh, some people like magazines, but they don't have time to read them. So what I'm going to do is distribute the magazines, but with cassette tapes instead of having a paper version. I'm pretty sure most of you have never used a cassette tape, or yeah. So it was before CDs, and yeah, so it's an old music technology that I've seen when I was young. But then, so that person said, okay, I'm going to have a patent for this, and my patent is distributing read content in an audio form. So it seemed, at the time, it seemed like it didn't work out that well. That person did it for a few years and then stopped doing it because it didn't work all that well. So she needed to distribute that by mail. But then podcasts started to be invented on the internet. And then she said, oh, well, I have a patent for podcasts because I have a patent for distributing audio content, read content or in an audio form. So she said, okay, everybody in the world who has a podcast should pay me money now. And went to court, but so thank God it was not, it wasn't accepted. But you see that patent can be very complicated. All right, 5 minutes. Okay, so yeah, so benefit. Oh yeah, network effects. So this is to talk about networks per se. So what happens with network effects? So that's another way of having entry barriers. So the big example for that is Facebook. I'm going to put that in red because that's eBay, not so much anymore. Yeah, you could say Microsoft, I'm not sure. So really, Facebook is the real deal here. Why? Because what's the benefit for me of using Facebook? It depends hugely on how many of my friends are using Facebook. So once you have a network that has, let's say, 50% of users on it, then imagine that some other new network like Google Plus, you might remember that failed attempt by Google of creating a competitor for Facebook. So they invent Google Plus and they say, yeah, it's super good. But what happened? Well, everybody was using Facebook already. So you may start using Google Plus, but none of your friends are on Google Plus. So you say, well, who cares? I'm not going to use it. So once you have a foothold there and you have a basis of users, it's just such a huge network effect that your network is extremely valuable, and it's super difficult for newcomers to enter the market. Telephone is a good example too. Telephone has this also this fixed cost.
An example would be like iPhones with like iMessage and FaceTime and stuff like that you can only use if you're on the Apple system.
Yeah, I was thinking of this. This is a bit complicated. So there are two. Yeah. So it's okay. So there there is the fact that once you buy an Apple product, then they make it super easy for you to buy other Apple products. But also they make it easy for you to contact other people with Apple products, but hard to contact people that don't have Apple products. So I don't know how good it is for Apple to do that, because in a way it's, so you're saying buy my iPhone, but if half of your friends have Androids, then it's not all that good to have this. So I'm not so sure about yeah, but it's yeah. So yeah, this is all under the umbrella of industrial organization, competition. Yeah, there's so the Nobel Prize. Not so. I think last year was Jean Tirole. He or the year before. Yeah, I think last year. So he worked a lot on all these questions of competition on yeah, in very specific industries, how firms manage to keep their customers trapped in their own ecosystems and all this kind of thing. That's super relevant right now. All right, so yeah, so the rest is mostly descriptive, so it's not going to be that difficult. So yeah, so let's stop here right now and continue next time.
See you, sir.
Oh yeah, it's called Meta.
Have a good day, sir.
Have a good day.
Professor,
Yeah.
I have some questions about last chapter.
Mm. Sure. So I'll end the chat and come back in a few minutes. All right. See you, everybody.
Hi, 1 second. I missed a few like first minutes of class. I just wanted to know what was the passing grade for the midterm. 25 out of 50, or is it 30 out of 50?
I'm not sure. So it should be written on the. I didn't see this in the class. I don't know.
All right, no problem.
Sir,
Sir, do you know what the exam average was?
I don't know for the whole. Yeah, actually, I haven't looked at it. So, but this is something I was curious about. So let me see if I can see it.
Okay, thank you.
What the exam average was. It all depends on whether or not I can see it on Moodle. Okay, they don't say the average, but it was out of how much the grade, total grade?
Out of 50, and then it was converted to 20.
All right. So I would venture that the average is about 15. Yeah, 15 out of 20.
Okay, thank
more
you,
or
sir.
less.
Sir,
Have a nice day.
I just have like two quick questions about the midterm. It's just like how is there a way to see our copy, like where we got it wrong?
Yeah, so for that, so you would have to come to office hours and then I can go more in detail with you.
And was the exam curved or not?
I think not for now. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So thanks everyone. And so I'll come back in a few minutes to answer the questions.